workplaces. And I think that is quite a strong statement, and I think that, Mr Chair.
The Honourable Member Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on the Health and Safety Pike River Implementation Bill. I was, in fact, on the Select Committee for most of all of the submissions on this bill and for much of the process undertaken with this bill. And, of course, Labor is supporting this bill, but we know that it can be improved even more, and it's particularly in Part 1 where we believe the government has departed, well, we know the government has departed from recommendations from the Royal Commission. And it's really important that we ask the question, why is that? Why is it that the government has gone out of its way to create WorkSafe New Zealand in a different format than that recommended by the Royal Commission? Because this is a very serious issue. We know the serious impacts when this goes wrong. Sadly, we know it all too well recently in this country. But for the government to depart from a recommendation of the Royal Commission means that the government quite specifically wants to challenge what the Royal Commission came up with. And I'd like the Minister to actually get up and explain to the House why that is. Because in my experience, a government doesn't do that for no good reason. It does it for a reason. And I'd like to understand the underlying agenda in setting up WorkSafe New Zealand in quite a different way than what the Royal Commission recommended. In particular, and my colleagues have talked about this, the tripartite nature of WorkSafe New Zealand was something that the Royal Commission thought was very important in terms of getting this right. And yet the government, when it's brought this bill forward, has failed to do that. And as I just said before, quite deliberately failed to do it. And done that not only against the advice or the recommendation of the Royal Commission, but against many of the submitters who came before our Select Committee, who argued that they wanted to make sure that the right people representing the stakeholder groups in health and safety were on the WorkSafe New Zealand board. So we do have now in this legislation, and I'm hoping that the Minister will explain why this is, that instead of talking about having a workers' representative, in other words, a union representative on the WorkSafe New Zealand board, we've got this strange legal description of a person who has perspectives of workers, whatever that might mean. I don't know if that's ever been tested in the court before. My guess is that it hasn't been. We don't know what that phrase means. It could mean anyone who's ever been in a workplace before. It could mean anyone who's ever met a worker before. It could mean the grandmother of someone who's currently in the workforce. It could mean the grandchild of someone who's currently in the workforce. We don't know, in fact, what that means. And yet what we do know is that the Minister has specifically and deliberately chosen to change what the Royal Commission recommended and go down this path instead. This path of describing people who we really don't know who they are. At least if it said a representative of the Council of Trade Unions, which it ought to say, in my view, we would know specifically exactly what we were talking about there. But we have no idea who this person is, or people, because it says, when appointing a member of the board, the Minister must have regard to the need to ensure that WorkSafe New Zealand has amongst its members persons who have collectively knowledge and experience of and capability in the following: public sector governance, central government processes, New Zealand's workplace health and safety environment, including workplace illness and occupational disease, and then mysteriously D, perspectives of workers, and then perspectives of employers. Well, what might that mean? I think that's equally as difficult to analyse because, well, yes, I probably understand some perspectives of employers. I don't think I'd be the right person to represent them on WorkSafe New Zealand, but I could argue that I have a knowledge of perspectives of employers. That's because I've negotiated against them for many, many years as a union organiser. But I don't think employers would want me necessarily to be their representative on Workplace New Zealand, or WorkSafe New Zealand. So, Mr Chair.
I call the honourable member, the Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman, and I apologise to my colleague who was in full flight, and I'd like to carry on. The profound wisdom of